Earlier today, we got a story in the Washington Post that Andrew Dudum, the CEO of HIMS and Hers company, spoke and gave an exclusive interview around the Novo Nordisk partnership ending. And in this interview, there's a couple of key nuggets of information that totally, in my opinion, change the dynamics of this relationship and the partnership ending. And I've come to the conclusion I don't think Novo is going to sue HIMS. I don't think there will be a major lawsuit. And I'll explain in this video exactly why I believe that to be the case. And if that is the case, then this is a massive buying opportunity, in my opinion, because the short interest has increased. It's over 35% of the total float. And the main reason why we're seeing this increase is because everybody in the street thinks that Novo is going to sue HIMS and Hers after this partnership deteriorated after a month. And in this video, I'm going to explain why I think that that's not going to happen. Let's jump right in. Andrew Dudum, HIMS CEO, posted earlier today saying that he spoke with the Washington Post for a story. And he further said in a post on X that this is a pivotal moment in healthcare where we can choose a future built on access, affordability, and patients as individuals. It's not just about innovation, it's about empowering providers and patients, expanding choice, and putting people at the center of care. The companies that lean into that future will help shape a system that truly works for everyone. So the full story is here, and I'm going to highlight a segment of this story. Now, of course, we know that HIMS has a lot going on. They recently acquired Zava, this company, with their European expansion. They also have a new chief product officer, which they announced very recently on June 26th. And most recently of all, they announced a expansion into the Canadian market right after their Zava acquisition. So on July 9th, just last week, they announced the planned expansion into Canada for compounded semaglutide. And funny enough, Roy made this post around the expansion into Canada with an interesting insight saying that in 2026, the patent in Canada for semaglutide lapses in January since Novo did not pay a few $100 to maintain the patent in Canada. The story here is how Novo will lose out on potentially billions of dollars because they didn't pay a few $100 to renew that patent. And this is actually really interesting in the grander scheme of what's going on between HIMS and Novo, how that partnership started, how it deteriorated further. And I've summarized a couple of main points from the Washington Post article. I have this post scheduled to go out tomorrow morning because I'm recording this. It's actually midnight right now. So this is just in my drafts right now. It's going to go live tomorrow morning. I just finished recording the HIMS weekly podcast. Okay, so I said in this post that the main takeaways here from the CEO Andrew Dudum's Washington Post story. First and foremost, Novo and HIMS were actually discussing a new product to make vials for Wegovy for HIMS to sell under the HIMS and Hers brand. So this was a discussion around an expansion of their existing partnership specifically for HIMS. And so a lot of these conversations were sort of conversations that were happening in the moment. We also learned from the Washington Post article that Novo put pressure on HIMS to prioritize Wegovy over the compounded semaglutide solutions, and that Novo ultimately ended the partnership without even notifying HIMS before announcing it to the public. So basically, HIMS was completely blindsided by Novo because they didn't even get a notification or a call or anything. The public learned at the same time as HIMS management learned that that partnership had ended. And of course, HIMS fell about 35% that day, erasing about $5 billion in the market cap. The fourth takeaway here that I had was that it seems as though Novo was trying to throw their weight around to bully HIMS into stopping the compounding. And they were even meddling in medical provider decisions, the article continues. The final takeaway is that Andrew Dudum ended that article saying he would not rule out a future partnership with Novo Nordisk in the future. And this might be surprising to a lot of people, saying, wow, a future partnership with Novo is not off the table. That's interesting, right? Because if you just look at the short interest for HIMS, it's as though the world is ending and that the company is going to go bankrupt tomorrow. And the short interest is massively high. It actually was increasing even further than that. We have it at new all-time highs. As of June 30th, We have 68.3 million shares sold short, up 10% from the last report, over 35% short interest. And so you can see this chart here with the stock price and the short interest overlaid on top of each other. And the short interest just keeps going up and to the right. A large part is on this lawsuit announcement. You see Tim here saying he's waiting for the lawsuit announcement. And a lot of the comments just reiterated lawsuit fears that the market in general has. So I understand why the short interest is going up, but it's also interesting that Andrew said he wouldn't rule out a future partnership with Novo. And you could say, well, this is kind of lip service or whatnot. But basically, the bottom line that I had here was that it sounds like this initial partnership was almost like a test for Novo to see how much they could get away with. And what Novo learned through this whole experience was that HIMS would not be bullied, that management was confident in their stance to allow them to personalize under this necessity where it met applicable regulatory requirements, and that HIMS felt they had sufficient leverage in that partnership where they saw it almost as a partnership of equals. And I end my post here by saying, if and when these two companies decide to partner again in the future, there will be no misconceptions about what Novo can or cannot get away with. I said with Novo, just as with Eli Lilly in the future, this potential episode has proven that any future partnership will be a partnership of equals. And this here is the salient takeaway, in my opinion. HIMS has successfully stood their ground. They've successfully proven that they will not be bullied, and that if you want a partnership with HIMS, then you have to come to the table as equals for a mutually beneficial good, and that you can't really strong arm this company into getting what you want, that the patient will always come first in the eyes of HIMS management. Now, here's the reason why I think Novo does not have any leverage to have an actual lawsuit, is because if they have a lawsuit, they run the risk of also losing that lawsuit. Now, if Novo wins the lawsuit, then what do they get out of it? They get that HIMS stops compounding semaglutide. The regulation becomes more clear. It's more black and white around this personalization guise that HIMS is relying on to meet the regulatory requirements. Because basically, HIMS is saying we're personalizing the dosing, we're personalizing the form factor, we're personalizing the prescription to the user's needs where there is a clinical necessity to do so. Now, Novo could argue in court basically that HIMS is failing to adhere to the laws prohibiting the mass sale of compounded drugs by using this personalization loophole. And if they were to win that lawsuit, again, if they were to win that lawsuit, then HIMS would basically have to stop the compounded semaglutide. However, if Novo loses that lawsuit, then it could also put in jeopardy their patent. It could put in jeopardy their ability to have this market cornered. And that's a really big deal for them because Novo makes a massive amount of money from Wegovy. They make a massive amount of money from their weight loss solutions in general. And just think of the scale here, right? Like Novo is like a $250 billion company. It's like $250 billion. And HIMS is $10 billion. If Novo were to completely win this lawsuit, they hurt a $10 billion competitor. But if Novo were to completely lose this lawsuit, worst case scenario, the result is they put in massive jeopardy a business line in Wegovy that is doing equivalent to HIM's entire market cap in revenue per year. Like there is no state of equivalency here. The numbers are just too massive between these two businesses that if Novo were to somehow lose the stance that they have on Wegovy, lose the patents, or if some law changed as a result of this lawsuit, and basically it made it a more even playing field for all the compounders, then that's a massive, massive blow to Novo Nordisk and their ability to essentially continue to have Wegovy be such a lucrative solution in the market. The equivalency in my mind is the indicator. And I think this Washington Post article perfectly summarizes why I think that they will partner again in the future, because now Novo has basically understood that this is not just any other compounder that they can boss around, that they can bully and throw their weight around, because they've done this with other smaller players and they've successfully thrown their weight around. Whereas with HIMS didn't stand for it. And HIMS said, okay, cool, let's cancel the partnership, no problem. And it doesn't really matter, because HIMS is confident in their decision. And I just think that Novo Nordisk has way too much to lose if they go down the legal route. Because if you go down the legal route, first of all, it should be seen as a last resort. because you will not know with a high degree of certainty what that outcome is of that legal route. And you could end up in a losing position. And you do not want to be in a losing position to give HIMS more ground to capture when you're a $250 billion company and when HIMS is a $10 billion company. And so this is why I think that a lawsuit is just noise, that realistically speaking, it's not going to happen. And realistically speaking, what could happen is a future partnership of equals when they both come to the table and where they're talking about expanding the pie as opposed to bullying each other around. I highly recommend everybody look at this Washington Post article, read through it. Andrew Dudum, I think, gave a great interview here. And to me personally, it seems very clear as to why Novo would have no leverage and no desire to pursue legal action because they have way too much to lose right now for way too little of a gain, potentially speaking. And when you look at it from that perspective, if you look at it from that perspective, if you agree with this assessment, then having 35% short interest is kind of crazy. And it's, in my opinion, a buying opportunity because that's what I'm doing with my portfolio. Do your own homework, do your own due diligence. Yeah, of course, we could have some legal action, but I don't see it. I don't see it because there's no leverage in it for Novo. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll be covering HIM's earnings live. They just announced it earlier today. It's going to be August 4th, the Monday after the market close. So make sure you tune into this channel for HIM's earnings. Make sure you follow me on X. I post about HIMS regularly, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching. See ya.